Happy 4th of July, everybody. We recently gave our kids this compound bow, and I thought what better way to celebrate Independence Day than to make an American flag stand for one of our weapons. Sounds about right. Now, I have no plans for this. I have a general idea of what I want to do, so you get to come along for the ride. Stick around and check it out. So I basically know that I want to have the stand to be a sideways flag. So you got the Union here with some stars and then the stripes. I want it to have a base that it can just sit down into so we can take it out and just sit it down on the ground when we're shooting. And I would also like it to flare out on the sides so it has a place to put the arrows into. And then I'll put a dowel or something here and here for the bow to hang on. Yeah, that looks about right. Let's see what I can make. All right, so to figure out the dimensions, I'm gonna set up the arrows that I wanna put in this thing, and I've got 7 of them. And then how to hang the bow on top of that. And the height will be determined by where these pieces come out on the sides. I'll have the flag up the middle, and I need to figure out a way to hang it on the wall, but I also obviously want to stick it into some kind of a stand, so I'll figure that out as I go. But this isn't a whole lot of weight, so I don't need some really robust wood. I think 1x4s will be just fine. And so let me take some measurements, and then I'll figure out how big to make the flag. So I have these cutoffs from another build I did, which should be exactly the right size. It's going to be just enough to be able to go just a little bit above the arrow, but also give me a little post to stick down into the stand. I think it's gonna work perfectly. And then I'll probably use some 2x4s or something for the stand. So that worked out very nicely. So I'll cut these all to the same length and width, and then I'll go with my signature look of burnt wood and stain. And these things are about as crooked as all get out. So I'm gonna have to make sure and clamp them down real good, but at least I can pick the orientation that will work best with how they're bent. I wanted the Union to look good proportionally, so I laid it out and determined what would be the good measurements to get enough stars on it while still making it look good vertically. Then I did my normal staining procedure. All right, so I've got my glue up all ready to go. I made a French cleat for the back of this because I will use it as a handle, but I also want to hang it on the wall. Now this is not gonna be super heavy, but it's just gonna be a whole lot easier to just hook it on the wall just like that when I get done using it as a stand. So I'm gonna glue all this up, brad nail all this in from the back, and then I'm gonna leave it overnight to dry. So I think the next step is to make some way to put this on a base. Then maybe I can take some 1x4 stock, kind of like in the military we have what's called a gear tree where you can hang up your flak jacket and your helmet, put your rifle up against it, put a pistol on it or something like that. And I think that's basically how I'm going to lay it out, kind of like that. So let me see if I can figure that out. So this is the layout I'm looking for. These front and back ones need to be long just because it's going to be more likely to fall forward if the bow is hanging on the front of it or backwards maybe, but I don't think it needs to be this long. So I'm going to put it together, see what it looks like. I'm just going to use screws, no glue, that way I can take it apart, and I also want to paint it. I'll probably just black, but for now I just want to put it together and see what it looks like. To make the stands, I clamped the boards into place and brad nailed them together just to hold them long enough to drill some screws in. Now once I was done with the base, it was a little tight, so I had to sand down the inside of the pieces so it would fit. Kind of snug, but still kind of loose. All right, so the next thing I need to do is put a cleat on the back so that when I have it out in the woods or something, when it drops down in here, it actually stops right there and doesn't go through the bottom, down into the dirt and get all muddy and whatnot. I may actually make it stop just a little bit too high, just a little bit higher, it doesn't bottom out for that very reason. And then I'll do the V to where the tip of the V will stop down at the bottom here as well. The next step was to build the V, so I laid out the arrows to make sure I had a long enough board and basically cut it in half. I laid out the arrows to get a good spread and then transferred the lines from one board to the other using a scrap board for a straight edge and a carpenter square. Then I went over to the table saw and set the angle and made the cut. Painting on the stars was as easy as taping on the template and then hit it with some pretty quick spray paint. So I cut these parts out of some 1x4 stock. I wanted to slim it down because it didn't need to be that wide. And I created this V that basically now I just need to figure out where to position it, and then based on that we'll cut off the ends down there. I'll glue these two parts together and then attach them from behind onto the flag, and then I can work on the horizontal pieces. I wanted to make sure that this thing was super secure, so I flipped it over, pre-drilled, and screwed it in from the back. All right, so I think I want the horizontal piece right about here. I don't want it covering up the stars, and then I want it to be able to support the arrows. So that would probably be about right here. And then I'll probably put something right here just to keep the tips of the arrows from coming out. So in case you couldn't tell already, I have no idea what I'm doing. So basically I want to get this angle, cut it on the table saw, and then I'll figure out the length I need and then trace under it to get me the height I need. Should work, right? Well, that almost got me the height I need. So if I just trim off basically the same amount over here, that'll get me about down to here, and that'll work just fine. Boy, I lucked into that one, didn't I? See how she looks. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, good enough for government work, right? Okay, so I'll clean this up, drill 7 evenly spaced holes in here, sand it down, put a chamfer on the holes, burn the wood, and glue it together. And for a little bit more added strength, I screwed it in from the back as well. Next, I wanted to put a piece down here to keep the arrows from falling out of the bottom, but my pencil was too long, so I had to modify it to draw a line on the back. After a quick cut at the miter saw, it fit perfectly. So I sanded it, burned it, and then it was ready to attach. Once I glued it and tacked it in, it was time to put the arrows back on and figure out where to hang the bow. I figured the best way to do this was with dowels, and so I did a trowel run with screws, which worked out really nicely, and that told me exactly where I needed the dowels to be. So I measured for the length of the dowel, and then I drilled a hole in it to put a vertical peg in it so that the bow wouldn't fall off when it was hanging. And in order to secure this into place, I drilled a small hole and then a big one. The big one is what the dowel will go into, and the small hole is where I will drill a screw through the back to secure the dowel in place. Now once I got it all together, I realized my mistake. I originally put the dowels where they were without the pegs, and so when it was time to put the bow on there, it wouldn't fit. So basically I just on the fly cut the pegs off because the friction fit will keep the bow in place. And then it fit perfectly. Then I painted the base with a couple of coats of black spray paint, and I mounted it on the wall. And when it's time to use it, all I have to do is lift it up and off. Hey, thanks for sticking around this far. I gotta tell you, this is one of my most enjoyable builds because it was a challenge. Started with a piece of paper and a pencil, kind of old school, just kind of figured it out as I went. And I think it turned out great. I hope it inspired you to get out in your shop and build something awesome. But if you wanted to build this exact project, I'll put a link in the description for the plans. That's it for this video. Happy 4th of July, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Chris Stapleton.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad strides and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets regular upon spur, singing up, yeah, through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land